Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, James Protin. Every week I will be sharing the experiences that have defined my journey and talking with people who have their own powerful story to tell. It's about doing better and being better in life, business, and all things in between. The visually inclined can catch us on YouTube, or you can check us out on just about every podcast platform. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. We have a great show for you today. A couple of fellow podcasters and entrepreneurs. Welcome Shawn and Antonino to the podcast. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Glad to be here. This is fun.
Yeah.
I've been looking forward to this since we first met. I think this will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we invite a lot of people on our podcast, but I don't think I've ever been invited on a different podcast. So I'm excited for this. Yeah, I think this is my first.
Nice. Well, good. Well, we're glad that we're your first. So, Antonino, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my background is computer science. So I am a software developer. When I was in college, I started a company. How I got into entrepreneurship is when I was in college, I started a company called Pima. It was a mobile app.
Okay.
And it was a way to aggregate events in your local area based on your interests. So if you're interested in coffee shops or happy hours, it would notify you of different happy hour events going on, things like that.
Nice.
Long story short, that company failed. I don't know if you heard of the Cambridge Analytics scandal with the whole 2016 election and Facebook and that Boston analytic firm. Long story short, Facebook got in trouble with the FBI. Data got removed from their Graph API, and I'd say 90% of our data was being pulled from that. And so woke up one morning, all the data was gone, company failed, and investors kind of, people interested panicked. So it failed. So then I had this company, AdsApp, which was the holding company for Pima, because I had this, young 22-year-old kid, had this big head where I was like, I'm going to create a bunch of different apps and sell off the apps and have this holding company that owns all these apps, Well, obviously I created some mobile games. Those didn't really work out, had a lot of failures early on. And so I just basically pivoted into consulting. And that's around the time I met Shawn. That's actually how I met Shawn. Because he had introduced me to one of his clients and ended up being one of our first clients.
Okay.
That, I pivoted into software consulting, so now I help startups and small to medium-sized businesses build custom software.
Nice. So you're a lot smarter than we are. So that's basically what you're saying.
I can attest to that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's fascinating stuff. I mean, that's really cool.
What's really fascinating, though, in my opinion, is he didn't hang up the spikes and say, man, I failed and that's it, the world's going to end, that kind of stuff. I think that you looked at things and saw little threads of other opportunities that tied to what you did. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what makes all of us, I think, what we are.
I mean, that's my thing is, to my fault, I throw a lot of stuff at the wall.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's my only advice to people interested in entrepreneurship is try and fail and just keep pushing forward because you never know. People don't get it right the first time. Mm-hmm. If you do, you're an anomaly.
Tell us a little bit about Shawn.
So, I'm different. So, my mom, she's an artist. My dad was a machinist. He was in the Navy and then took a trade and he came out. It's weird when you look at the way that you're wired and you look at the way that you were raised. And so my mom exposed my brother and I to artwork and museums and the color palette. She does oil painting. Really good. Anyhow, so I had this background about the creative and artistic side of things. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, I really liked to read. I had more time. But that exposure to those things, and I think the other side of it with my family, I come from a big Italian family, and you start learning, you don't know what you don't know, all right? So at my great-grandparents' houses and the big families, people would show up, and you'd welcome them in and make sure they had something to eat and drink and everything like that. And that's I don't know if that's part of just the ethnicity or the way the families are. Anyhow, you learn these things, and I roped all those things together over time, the practical things, the logic, the creativity, the people side of things. And I worked in the corporate world for 20 plus years with architects and engineers doing business development and marketing side, and just had a lot of fun doing that. But I also knew in the back of my head that there was something more. I wanted to own my own business at some point.
Sure.
And timing is a really interesting thing on how that all works. And, people that know me said, man, I bet you wish you would have started your marketing and branding business 10 years ago. And I said, well, not really, because that was like a 21-year-long paid internship.
Oh, yeah.
It was you can't.
That was a fertile
back.
learning ground in that industry for doing what we do.
Absolutely. So even if you go back and you get a degree and you master, whatever the case is, there's no substitute for the things you learn on the road.
Yeah. Yep.
So, that's where I am. I serve a really interesting client base. It's a mix, but I really like to sit down with owners, figure out what their goals are, where they want to take the business, and how we're going to grow it. Because it's an overlap between, the marketing, the branding,
Sure.
and the business aspect.
Absolutely.
It's got to tie to their business goals. If it doesn't,
Absolutely.
it's a waste of everyone's time and money, and I don't want to waste anybody's time or money.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind
Won't
of
be
how
a business
I've
very long
wired.
if you do.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you guys, okay. Here's this is to me very important. If you're anybody that's out there thinking about business, or even if you're just in a career. So, running a business, podcasting, friends and family relationships. Those three things alone in life. That's 3 full-time gigs right there. Yeah. Okay, you guys are doing all 3. So how do you find that work-life balance? How do you make that work where just to prevent burnout?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'm fortunate that I actually enjoy what I do. So I do, last night I was 11:30 at night and I looked at the clock. I was like, oh, I didn't realize it was that late, but I enjoy it. So to me, it's not so much a job. I think the key, though, is finding the things that you don't enjoy and learning how to offload those onto
That's big. The other thing is, too, when I started my own business, there was a lot of coffee shop meetings and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was good to get out there and shed the corporate skin, become something new. But these relationships, I think my networking, it became selective networking. I really wanted to not just work a room and meet people and things like that. My thing was more about finding a quality person, somebody that you have a connection with on something. And if business cultivates, great. But the thing is, you've established your relationship, and it's the care and the time that you put into it. You can't invest tons and tons of time in every single situation, but I think that it's necessary when you find a person that has similar interests or maybe completely different interests that that can complement a lot of the things that you do. I think that's what's really important. And then cultivating those relationships over time, just making sure that you're checking in with them, even if they're not a client or whatever. I think it's good where you maintain, and when it's a good relationship. I have a very dear friend in Erie, Pennsylvania, who we worked on a couple things together, but Kevin's the kind of guy that we might not talk for 6 months, but when we pick up the phone, it's almost as if we were just together the day before.
Right.
You could just pick up where you left off.
And I love that you mentioned about care, because I think that's where it comes from. If you care, right, it doesn't take years to develop a meaningful relationship if you go into it from that space of caring about that individual and wanting to learn about them and know more about them, right? So I think that's a very important part of it. And then, you start the relationship with meaning and you cultivate it, and it only gets better from there.
Yeah, I agree.
So every successful person I know, every single one, to a person, is a lifelong learner. They classify themselves as that. They devote themselves to learning, whether it's self-help, books, reading, whatever the case may be. So what steps do you guys take to continuously keep learning and growing?
Well, I'd say for me, the big thing is don't be afraid to fail. I like to read. I like to watch a lot of documentaries and learn a bunch of different things. But I learn the best from making mistakes. Because I think when you make a hard mistake and it directly impacts you, you learn from that and you don't make that mistake again. And I think a lot of times younger people are afraid to make mistakes. I think you're grown up. I was the same way. I was told, like, you go to school, get good grades, like do the right thing, like don't shy away from the path. But to be an entrepreneur, to be successful, you have to try new things. You have to be willing to take a risk and fail. And so I think that's the best way to learn.
I have a son and a daughter, 12-year-old son and 10-year-old daughter, Enzo and Gia. And I just had this very similar conversation with Enzo the other day. I asked him, what he's thinking about career-wise and stuff. I realized you're 12, and he said,
That's where we're at, though. At 12 years old, you got to start thinking about that stuff.
We had an earlier conversation about technology and things like that. Yeah, these young people, these younger kids, they're so far ahead of because of the tools they have.
Right.
Right. But anyhow, I was talking with him about whatever you want to do, make sure you enjoy it. And it was part of it's kind of echoing what you said earlier. I want people to be happy. There's a young lady coming in here soon that I'm going to sit down with. We work on social media and a lot of things together. It's the same thing with her. Like I keep telling her, do what you love. People say, well, if you really love it, it doesn't seem like work. No, it seems like a hell of a lot of work. It's work, but it's work that we enjoy. I think that's the difference.
That's what it is. What have been some obstacles on your entrepreneurial journey, right? So we all have had them. We've all, sometimes they're a mountain, sometimes they're just a speed bump. But what are some significant obstacles that you guys have faced on your journey to where you are?
Well, for me, I've made a lot of mistakes. I think one of the ones that for me was the biggest is not understanding the value of building a team.
Okay.
I think I learned that too late. I always kick myself because I think if I would go back and start building a team and building a business sooner rather than, I had this mentality I could do it all myself. Like I started a software business.
When you start, you say nobody can do it better than me.
Right.
That's
and so like that I think cost me a lot of time, heartache, and money.
So one thing that comes to mind is I should have learned this from the corporate world, and I did. I guess I forgot. So I had a client that owned 9 Ace Hardware stores, and we were doing everything. Man, I was training people. I was helping recruit. Doing all this different work for each location to make sure they're consistent with the branding, getting their planograms and everything that they get from Ace Hardware in position at the right time and all this other kind of stuff. And focused all kinds of time and energy on this client. It was good billing. They were great people to work with. Well, just like any project that I work on, there's a certain life expectancy too.
Sure.
But I wasn't preparing. I wasn't planning for when that client goes away because I was committing so much time and resources to this big client. And then all of a sudden it went away, and I had no balls in the air. I think that was one of the things back in the engineering world. I think that I watched other departments like that. They worked on big projects, weren't cultivating more business, and all of a sudden, they had to furlough people or transfer them into different departments and things like that. Well, I didn't have that luxury. My thing is I got bills to pay, I got people to feed, and I need more work. So
sure.
In my business now, I make sure that we always have different things rolling. You have to be that way. You got to critically important.
Yeah.
The big mistake was I and that was a challenge, to just let that piece fail. And I learned a lot from it. I don't do that anymore.
So what led you guys to the Boss Juice podcast? So how much of your entrepreneurial path, journey that you've walked, the path you've walked is infused into that? Where did that all come from?
Yeah, so about 2 years ago now, something like that. So Shawn and I have like a standing call on Fridays, actually like this time usually, and we just talk about different things going on, some of the projects we work on and whatnot. But I would always say to Shawn, it's like he's my therapist. I was like, because I would kind of be like, dude, you won't believe what I did this week or what happened, blah, blah, and it's like my frustration growing a business and like different obstacles and failures that I've hit.
Okay.
And, we started talking and we realized that, we're not I found comfort in understanding, like, Shawn would be like, like, hey, it's okay. Like this happened to me, like, 3 years ago, like, just like, you're going to be okay. Like, here's how, like, I handled it. Like, have someone to give advice. And
that's cool.
I grew up always admiring entrepreneurs and business owners like that. Those are my favorite books to read, are like the historical books on people who started businesses. And all those books and stories, you hear about the success, but you also hear about those failures. But I think there's a misconception in society where kids growing up believe, oh, I'm going to start a business and it's going to correlate to making a ton of money and it's going to be a great life. But you don't realize how hard it is and the horror stories that come along with it until you get to that end of the road. And I think that's what we want to do, is just kind of hear people's stories and kind of teach the younger generation of entrepreneurs that it's not easy, and that, to learn from others' experiences.
Sure. So, Boss Juice, talk to me.
So we kicked around different ideas. So I say, hey, boss kind of implies that you're in charge of something, you know something, you've got this knowledge base on your shoulders, right? And juice is, slang for the story. It's the scoop. So that's why we wanted to sit down with people in an environment, very similar, in a format very similar, sit down and talk with them about all these things. Man, what did you go through? And people get emotional at times, and I mean, it's really cool stuff. And I hope we're drawing the right kind of content from people that's helping other people that are, wired selling, people that want to learn this kind of stuff. But yeah, we've had a lot of fun with it. There are bigger things, I think, that are going to stem from the podcast as well. We've got a bunch of different ideas.
I absolutely love the show. I mean, I had such a good time on that. To keep doing what you're doing, and especially around the podcasting world, right?
Absolutely.
There's some really cool podcasts here in Pittsburgh. Both of ours included in that. Right. And I think there's some interesting things where we can go and bring people even from outside of the region, and do some pretty cool stuff. Yeah, listen, give me in a loop. I'd love to.
Sounds like we have opportunity, right?
Yeah, absolutely. How do you see? In you guys, what's your perspective on podcasting and how you see it evolving as we move forward?
So, yeah, I think that it's, and Shawn can probably speak more to this, but I think it's actually a good marketing tool for businesses in the future. I think with COVID, we hit into this time zone where, everyone wants to be remote. Getting people back in the office is very tough. People like to meet remotely, which is, have your own opinion on that is fine. But there is something to building a relationship, like we were talking about, with people and growing that over time. My uncle, who's a business partner of mine, always says there's going to be competing businesses, but people buy from the people that they know, like, and trust.
True.
And
100%.
How do you build a brand that is likable and trustable when people don't want to interface in person anymore? And I think podcasting is the medium to do that. And so I see businesses having podcasts with key people in their organization to help promote their brand, but to build trust and relationship with their customers.
Okay. So, Shawn, for you, from a you're a marketing consultant. We do a lot of the same things. Do you see podcasting as a billable service?
That's interesting, and I think the answer to right off the bat is yes. There's opportunity in anything. It's how you serve it up, right? So with a podcast, and Antonino and I had this conversation a couple times, and we're working on a couple things with this. But I think that podcasts, from a business development standpoint, if a listener is listening to a particular person who's being interviewed, and they say, "Man, that's a business I'd like to work with," there's no better way to get to know a person than listen to them on a podcast, because they're spilling their guts. There's emotional things. In a business meeting, they're not going to do this.
Right.
They're guarded, and they're going to be, professional and everything like that. Not that this isn't professional. They're going to be a little more loose, and they're going to share things. So for a person who's a salesperson, business development person, I think that podcasts, listening to them, watching them for particular reasons to build business, you can get to really know somebody. And
I agree.
There's no better way right now. and it's live and it's real, and it's really cool. We've got so many really cool opportunities right now with technology, and I love it, really do.
What do you want my mom to take away from here?
That's a great question. I think that for me, the big takeaway, if I could instill any type of knowledge, I guess, on like people listening that are interested in business or entrepreneurship is, I said it earlier, just don't be afraid to fail. I think like one of my biggest blessings in life is that I have a great family and friends who have always supported me. And I know that like not everyone has that. So I always know that if I fail, like I could hit rock bottom, I could go bankrupt, and like my mom and dad and my grandparents, someone will come and let me sleep on their couch. And my friends won't judge me or anything like that. But I think a lot of people don't have that.
Yeah.
And so like I think that having conversations like this and building like a community of trust around entrepreneurship to encourage people to take risks, try things, and know that it's okay to fail is so important. So like if we can do anything, in my opinion, it's to build up a community of, like trust around entrepreneurship. Maybe that's one of those expos are. It's like building a community of entrepreneurship to help people learn that it's okay to fail and have a support group. Like I said, you're my therapy on Fridays.
I can't get this vision out of my head of you sleeping on your grandma's couch with a pit hoodie on and a Steeler blanket. Yeah.
It could happen.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
But I just wanted to share one thing. I told you there's this song that's been sticking in my head. And thank you.
Yeah.
The lyrics, I think, man, you just can't beat these, and it's so entrepreneurial. The artist is it's Lily Miola, and did you ever hear of this song called Daydreams? Have you guys heard the song?
I have not.
I'm just going to read the first verse because it's really cool. It says, "When we were kids in the backyard playing astronauts and rock stars, no one told us to stop it. Called us unrealistic. Then suddenly, you're 18, go to college for your plan B. What you want is too risky, live for weekends and whiskey. We all got these big ideas. One day they're replaced with fears. How did we get there?" And then she goes on, "Darling, don't quit your daydream. It's your life and you're making. It ain't big enough if it doesn't scare the hell out of you. If it makes you nervous, it's probably worth it. Why save it for sleep when you could be living your daydream?" To me, those are really powerful lyrics.
That's very powerful. I mean, it really is. That's cool. Thanks for sharing it.
I think that, as entrepreneurs, people get it. People have all these goals and ideas and they want to do things, but there's this fear of jumping off the diving board into the deep end. And that's where I think all of us collectively here, we've already been on a diving board more than once.
Yep. That's great. Great stuff, guys. Thank you.
We appreciate you having us.
No, I appreciate this, and I'm looking forward to us doing some stuff together and collaborating. I think we got some opportunity to do some cool things. So thanks a lot, man, and have a great weekend. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Fun. Thanks again.
Appreciate it.